The twin suns of Ravion 6 burned above a dusty sky, turning the market streets into a sea of orange light. Humans were rare here, and the ones who came were mostly traders, smugglers, or wanderers with empty pockets and old dreams. Evan Cross was one of them, a tired human trader trying to earn enough credits to repair his old cargo ship. He sold Earth junk, toys, books, music boxes, things no one on Earth wanted anymore, but to aliens, these objects were strange and fascinating. He stood behind his metal cart, calling out to anyone passing. Old treasures from the blue planet Earth. Take a look, cheap and shiny. Most aliens ignored him, their long limbs moving gracefully through the crowd. Evan sighed and wiped the dust from a glass snow globe, watching the fake snow swirl inside. Sometimes, when he looked at these toys, he missed home, though home had forgotten him long ago. Then, a small shadow appeared near his cart. Evan looked down and froze. It was a little alien girl, maybe 10 years old by human guess. Her skin was soft gray, her eyes big and purple, glowing slightly in the sunlight. She held something tightly in her trembling hands. A small, broken toy robot. Her voice was soft, like a whisper caught in the wind. Take my toys, human. I need money to buy medicine for my mother. Evan blinked, not sure he heard right. What did you say? He asked gently. The girl's eyes filled with tears. Please, I'll sell all my toys. Just give me some credits. My mother is sick, and they won't help us. Evan felt something twist in his chest. He looked at the small robot. It wasn't junk, it was alien tech, smooth and shining with tiny circuits. This thing could be worth a fortune, but she didn't know. He could have taken it and walked away rich, but her face stopped him. It wasn't about money anymore. What's your name, kid? He asked. Lyra, she said quietly, looking down. All right, Lyra, Evan said, kneeling. Where's your mother now? In the lower tunnels, Lyra whispered. She can't move anymore, and the healers won't come because of the law. Evan frowned. What law? The Galactic Law, Lyra said, trembling. They say humans can't give medicine to aliens, and aliens can't share cures with humans. It's forbidden. Evan clenched his fists. That's madness, she nodded. Please, human, I just need a little money. Evan opened his bag and pulled out some food packets. Here, take this, he said, and keep your toy. Lyra shook her head. No, please take it. I don't need toys, I need credits. He smiled weakly. Keep it, Lyra. You'll need it more than I will. Suddenly, a loud mechanical sound filled the air. Everyone in the market froze. From the sky, a patrol ship descended, shining blue lights scanning the ground. Evan's heart started to pound. It was the Galactic Authority, and they didn't like humans trading here. Hide, Evan whispered. Lyra's eyes widened in fear. She crawled under his cart, clutching the toy robot. The patrol droid landed nearby, and 3 alien soldiers stepped out, their armor glowing. One of them pointed at Evan. You there, human traitor. Step away from the cart, the metallic voice ordered. Evan raised his hands slowly, trying to stay calm. Is there a problem, officer? He said, forcing a nervous smile. The soldier's visor flashed red, scanning him. Human traders are restricted from this zone. Show your permit. Evan hesitated. His permit was fake, and if they scanned deeper, he was finished. One of the soldiers moved toward his cart. Lyra held her breath under it, trembling so hard the toy in her hands buzzed softly. Evan noticed the noise and quickly coughed to cover it. Hey, easy, he said. I'm just selling harmless trinkets. The soldier lifted a scanner. Then you won. Do you mind if we check your cargo? Evan's mind raced. If they found Lyra, they'd take her away. Maybe worse. He glanced at the small drone toy beside him. With a flick of his wrist, he pressed a hidden button. The drone whirred to life and zipped into the air, flashing red lights. Unauthorized object, shouted the soldiers as they chased it. Evan leaned down and whispered, Now, kid, run. But Lyra shook her head, her eyes wide with tears. They'll catch us, she whispered. Not if we move fast, Evan said, pulling her from under the cart. The two of them dashed through the crowded market as alarms blared behind them. Shouts and footsteps echoed, lights flashed. Evan grabbed her hand, his heart hammering. Hold on, Lyra, I've got you, he said. They turned a corner, vanishing into the smoky alleys as the soldiers' voices faded in the distance, and above them, the patrol ship's loudspeaker roared. Attention! All units! Human trader escaping with alien child detained on site. Evan's stomach turned cold. He looked at Lyra, who clung to him, shivering. What did I just get myself into, he whispered under his breath. The part ends with the sound of sirens echoing through the night sky, and a faint, trembling voice beside him saying, Please, human, don't leave me. The alleys of Ravion 6 were narrow and filled with smoke. Evan ran, pulling Lyra close behind. his breath coming in sharp bursts. Sirens wailed across the marketplace as the Galactic Authority spread through every street. Shadows of patrol drones swept over the rooftops like hunting birds. Evan could hear the mechanical voice echoing through the speakers. Human trader identified, traveling with alien miner, detain immediately. Lyra stumbled, nearly falling, but Evan caught her arm before she hit the ground. Her small body was shaking, her breath uneven. He looked around. Broken neon signs flickered above rusted doors. Alien vendors were locking down their stalls, afraid to get involved. Ravion 6 was a place where no one helped anyone, not unless they humped. Had something to gain, Evan whispered, "This way," and guided her into a tunnel that smelled of metal and oil. They reached a dead end, a wide pipe leading into the old junk district. Evan tapped a code on his wristband and a small hatch opened. He helped Lyra crawl inside first, then followed, sealing it behind them. Darkness surrounded them except for a faint red light blinking from his wrist device. Lyra's voice trembled. "They'll find us. They always find us." Evan shook his head. "Not yet, kid. Not tonight." Inside the pipe, the air was warm and heavy. They crawled for what felt like miles until they reached a cracked metal door. Evan pushed it open and stepped into a junkyard full of broken ships, wires, and forgotten machines. He checked the sky. Drones passed overhead but didn't scan this far. For now, they were safe. Lyra sat down on a pile of scrap, her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked so small against the endless junk. Evan opened a food packet and handed it to her. "Eat," he said. "You'll need your strength." She hesitated. "You shouldn't help me, human. They'll hurt you too." Evan gave a small laugh, tired but kind. "Too late for that, I think," he said. She looked up at him, her purple eyes shining with tears. "I just wanted to save her," she whispered. "My mother." He crouched beside her. "Tell me," he said softly. "What happened to her?" Lyra took a deep breath, her small hands gripping the toy robot tightly. "My mother is a healer. She helps people, even humans. But the Galactic Law says that's wrong. They said she used forbidden science." She swallowed hard. "They took her medicine, burned her lab, and now she's sick with the same virus she tried to cure." Evan felt anger rising inside him. He had seen laws like that before. Laws that made cruelty look like order. "Why didn't you ask the authority for help?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. Because they said it's justice. They said she broke the law and they let her die." Her voice cracked and she started to cry. Evan looked at her and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Guilt, hope, and a strange warmth all at once. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll find a way to help her, I promise." She looked at him with disbelief. "Why would you help me?" He smiled faintly. "Because someone once helped me when I was lost too." A sudden metallic sound cut through the night. Evan froze, pulling Lyra behind a pile of scrap. Above them, a searchlight swept across the junkyard. A patrol droid hovered low, scanning for life signatures. Evan whispered, "Stay quiet." The droid beeped, its sensors locking onto heat. Lyra covered her mouth, trembling. Evan tapped his wristband and sent a signal to one of his broken drones nearby. It powered up weakly and flew toward the far side of the yard, glowing bright red. The droid turned to follow it and flew away, chasing the false signal. Evan exhaled slowly, his heart pounding. "That was close," he muttered. Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "How did you do that?" He smirked. "Old smuggler tricks." She gave a small smile for the first time, and for a moment the fear faded, but then a new sound filled the air. Heavy footsteps echoing in the metal corridors behind them. Evan turned, his pulse quickening. "Not again," he whispered. 3 armored soldiers entered the junkyard, scanning everything with bright blue lights. Lyra gripped his arm tightly, whispering, "They're here." Evan looked around desperately. He had to think fast. His ship was nearby, hidden under a scrap pile at the far edge of the yard. If they could reach it, they might escape the planet. He leaned close to Lyra. "We're going to run on my signal, okay?" She nodded, trying to be brave though her hands shook. The soldiers moved closer, weapons ready. Evan picked up a small metal part and threw it across the yard. The noise distracted them for a moment, and he grabbed Ra's hand. "Now!" he shouted. They sprinted through the maze of junk, blasters firing behind them, sparks flying as bullets hit metal walls. Evan and Lyra ducked, dodging fire, hearts racing. As they neared the hidden ship, a bolt hit the ground beside them, exploding in a flash of blue light. Evan shielded Lyra as debris rained down. He pulled open a hatch and pushed her inside, climbing after her. The ship's systems came alive with a low hum. Outside, soldiers surrounded the area, shouting commands. Evan slammed his hand on the controls. "Hold on, kid," he said through clenched teeth. "We're getting out of here." The engines roared, dust and smoke rising. The ship lifted off just as blaster fire struck its hull. Lyra screamed, clutching the seat, and as they shot into the night sky, the voice of the Galactic Commander echoed through the comms. Evan Cross, you have broken Galactic Law. Surrender or be destroyed. Evan glanced at Lyra and whispered, looks like we're both outlaws now. The ship disappeared into the clouds, leaving behind the burning lights of Ravion 6. And for the first time, Lyra felt a tiny spark of hope, glowing brighter than the stars above. The stars stretched like rivers of light as Evan's old cargo ship, the Starbound, drifted through space. Its engines hummed weakly, warning lights blinking across the console. Evan sat in the pilot's seat, hands tight on the controls, trying to keep the ship steady. Behind him, Lyra sat curled up, clutching her toy robot like it was a piece of her soul. She hadn't spoken much since they escaped Ravion 6. Every few minutes, she'd glance at the stars outside the window, her eyes wide and full of questions. Evan turned his chair slightly, forcing a small smile. You all right, kid? He asked. Lyra nodded slowly. You shouldn't have helped me. Evan laughed softly. Too late for that now. For a moment, there was silence, only the quiet hum of the ship and the endless view of space. Then Lyra whispered, they'll come after us. They always do. Evan sighed. Let them come. I've been chased before. But inside, he wasn't as calm as he sounded. He knew the Galactic Authority wouldn't just forget this. Helping an alien child was considered a serious crime under Galactic Law. He checked the radar. No ships nearby, at least for now. Where are we going? Lyra asked, her small voice echoing softly. Somewhere safe, Evan said. I know a station out near the asteroid belt. It's off the grid. Nobody there asks questions. She tilted her head. Will they have medicine? Evan paused. Maybe. Or maybe they'll help us find it. He looked at her again. Pale gray skin, tired eyes, trembling hands. She was just a child, but her eyes looked older than her years. What kind of sickness does your mother have? He asked. Lyra hugged the toy tighter. She called it a cross virus. Something that spreads between species, but the law banned her from working on it. They said she broke the code of purity. Evan frowned. So she tried to cure it, and they punished her? Lyra nodded. Yes, and when she got sick, no one helped. Evan leaned back in his seat, staring out the window. He had seen laws like that before, cold, logical rules that forgot what it meant to be alive. He clenched his jaw. Then we'll fix this ourselves. Lyra blinked. We? Yeah, he said. You and me, kid. We'll find that cure and save your mother. For the first time, Lyra smiled, a small, fragile smile. But then the ship's alarm beeped. Evan's eyes shot to the screen. An unidentified beacon was following them. A small ship, fast and sharp. Damn, he muttered. They found us already. He flipped a few switches, putting the Starbound into silent mode. The engines dimmed, and the ship drifted into a nearby asteroid field hiding among the rocks. Lyra gripped her seat, scared. What is it? She asked. Evan checked the sensors. Could be a patrol, or worse, a bounty hunter. He shut off the lights, leaving them in the dim glow of the control panel. Outside, the asteroids floated slowly like sleeping giants. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a shadow passed over them. The other ship scanning the area, Evan whispered, "Stay quiet." He watched the radar, heart pounding. The shadow moved closer, almost right above them. Lyra's toy robot suddenly buzzed, a tiny spark of blue light flickering from its chest. Evan hissed, "Turn that off." Lyra tried, but the toy glowed brighter. The radar pinged. They'd been detected. A voice came through the comms, deep and rough. "Evan Cross, I know you're out there." Lyra gasped. "Who is that?" Evan's eyes narrowed. "A bounty hunter, name's Cale Voss. He works for the Galactic Science Division." The voice continued. "You have something that belongs to us, human. The girl, and the data in her toy." Lyra's hands shook. "How does he know?" Evan didn't answer. He just grabbed the controls and powered the ship back on. "Hold tight," he shouted. The Starbound roared to life, bursting from the asteroid field as laser fire chased behind. Explosions lit the dark sky, asteroids breaking apart like fireworks. Evan dodged between the debris, his hands flying over the controls. Lyra screamed as the ship jolted violently. Cale's voice echoed again. "You can't hide her, human. She's not just a child. She's the key to something much bigger." Evan's mind raced. He looked at Lyra, terrified, clutching the glowing toy. "What does he mean?" he asked. She shook her head. "I don't know. My mother said the cure was inside the code, hidden where no one would find it." Evan stared at the toy, realization dawning. It wasn't just a plaything. It was a data core, maybe holding the secret to the cure. The bounty ship fired again, hitting their wing. Evan gritted his teeth. "Hold on. I've got one trick left." He pulled a lever and launched a flare decoy, the ship vanishing behind a burst of bright plasma. The sensors went blank. Kale lost them, at least for now. Evan let out a shaky breath and slowed the ship. Lyra looked up at him, voice trembling. "Are we safe?" He smiled weakly. "For the moment, yeah." She looked at him with new hope in her eyes. "You really mean to help my mother, don't you?" Evan nodded slowly, his voice firm. "I promised I would, and humans keep their promises." Outside, the stars drifted by silently, but in that silence, a bond had formed between a human who had lost everything and an alien child who still believed in miracles. The starbound drifted silently through deep space, its hull scorched and cracked from the last fight. Evan worked on the controls, sparks flying from the damaged console, his hands trembling slightly. Lyra sat behind him, her toy robot glowing faintly in her lap, its tiny circuits pulsing like a heartbeat. The silence between them felt heavy, filled with fear and questions neither dared to ask. Finally, Evan spoke, his voice tired but steady. "We can't keep running, kid," he said. "We need answers." Lyra looked up. "About my mother?" He nodded. "And about that thing in your hands." He connected the robot to the ship's main computer. The screen lit up with streams of alien symbols, glowing bright blue against the dark. Evan frowned. "It's a data core, encrypted with something old and powerful." He typed rapidly, trying to decode it. Then, suddenly, a holographic image flickered to life. A woman's face, tired but kind, gray-skinned like Lyra, her eyes glowing softly. Lyra gasped. "Mother." The hologram spoke in a trembling voice. "If you are seeing this, my daughter, it means I've failed, and they've taken everything." Her words echoed through the cabin like ghosts. "They will come for you, because inside this toy, I hid the formula, a cure for all life, the nanite serum." Evan's eyes widened. "A universal cure?" The hologram continued. "It can heal any species, any sickness, but the Galactic Law forbids it. They fear unity more than death." Lyra's hands shook, tears forming in her eyes. "She knew they'd destroy her work," she whispered. Evan leaned closer. "The cure's in here, but it's incomplete. It's missing one fragment." He zoomed in on the holographic data. A map appeared, leading to the Galactic Central Lab, deep inside Authority territory. "That's suicide," he muttered. "They'll kill us before we even land." Lyra looked at him with trembling lips. "But it's the only way to save her." Evan sighed, looking at the tiny girl in front of him. She was brave, far braver than he'd ever been. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll go, but once we're there, we'll have to fight our way through." Lyra nodded, her small hands clutching the robot tighter. "Then we fight," she whispered. Hours later, the starbound exited hyperspace near the galactic core. The planet below glowed like a city made of light. Tall silver towers, endless energy beams shooting toward the stars. Evan switched the ship into stealth mode, lowering its signal. They slipped into the lower atmosphere, unseen among the traffic of cargo vessels. Inside the city's shadowy underbelly, they landed on a forgotten platform. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burnt metal. Evan opened a hidden compartment and pulled out a small plasma pistol. He looked at Lyra. "Stay close to me and don't make a sound." She nodded, though her heart was beating so loud she could barely hear her thoughts. They moved through the dim tunnels under the lab district. Security drones hovered above, scanning every shadow. Evan guided her to a maintenance door and used a stolen code key to unlock it. Inside, rows of glow. Wing tanks filled the room, holding strange, shimmering liquids. Lyra stared in awe. "What is this place?" Evan whispered, "The research vault, the place where your mother's work was stolen." Suddenly, alarms blared, red lights flashing across the room. A robotic voice echoed, "Unauthorized entry detected." Evan cursed under his breath. "They found us." Doors slammed shut, and armored guards poured in from both sides, weapons ready. Evan fired first, blue plasma lighting up the room. The battle began, loud and chaotic. Lyra ducked behind a console, covering her ears as explosions rocked the lab. She wanted to help, but she was terrified. Then, the toy robot in her hands began to vibrate, glowing brighter. It projected a new holographic symbol, one that linked with the lab's main terminal. Lyra realized what she had to do. She crawled toward the terminal, dodging sparks and debris, and placed the robot onto the control pad. The screens came alive with streams of code, unlocking files one by one. "Nanite protocol activated," the system said. Evan turned as another guard fell. "Lyra, what are you doing?" "Finishing what my mother started," she shouted back, her voice shaking. A brilliant light filled the room. The cure's code began to assemble, forming a glowing sphere above the terminal. Then the lab doors burst open again. Kale Voss, the bounty hunter, stepped inside, his red cybernetic eyes scanning the chaos. "End of the line, human," he growled, aiming his blaster. Evan pulled Lyra behind him, aiming his own weapon. "Not yet," Evan said, his voice steady despite the fear. Kale smirked. "You think you can fight the law? You're just one man." Evan's eyes hardened. "Yeah, but I'm human, and humans don't quit." He fired first, and the room exploded into chaos again. The part ends with the glowing sphere of light rising higher, pulsing with life, and Lyra's trembling voice whispering, "Mother, it's working." The starbound floated in silence above the galactic central world, its hull scarred and smoking from the last battle. Inside, the air smelled of errant circuits and fear. Evan sat at the controls, his hands trembling as he tried to stabilize the engines. Beside him, Lyra watched the glowing sphere in her hands, the half-complete cure her mother had designed, pulsing like a living heart. "We barely made it out," Evan muttered, sweat dripping from his forehead. Lyra's voice was quiet. "But the cure's still not ready." He nodded grimly. "We've got a piece of it, but the rest is locked deep in the central archives, the one place no humans ever walked out of alive." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly under the flickering lights. "Then that's where we go." Evan gave a tired laugh, shaking his head. "Kid, that planet is a fortress, guarded by the authority. Scanners, drones, hunters, everything. It's suicide." Lyra looked straight into his eyes. "You said humans don't quit." The words hit him hard. He stared at her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Yeah, I did say that." They set a course toward the planet's shadow side, a massive dark region filled with storm clouds and radiation. No sane pilot would enter there, which made it perfect for them. The ship trembled as they descended through violent winds, lightning flashing across the cockpit. Evan gripped the controls tightly. "Hold on, kid. This is going to be rough." The ship dove through black clouds and finally burst into the lower atmosphere. Beneath them stretched a massive city of steel and glass, glowing silver under the storm's light. And in its center, the towering Galactic Central Lab, shining like a blade in the dark. They landed on an abandoned docking platform hidden beneath broken bridges and rusted towers. Evan shut down the engines and pulled on his jacket. "We move fast. Stay close. And if anything happens—" "I know," Lyra interrupted softly. "Don't stop running." He smiled sadly. "Yeah, something like that." They slipped through the shadows of the undone. Recipe past glowing vents and humming energy lines, aliens of all kinds hid from the light, scavengers and exiles who'd given up on the galaxy's rules. One of them, a tall insectoid creature, stopped them. "You shouldn't be here, human," it hissed. "The Central Guards will burn this whole block before sunrise," Evan whispered. "We're looking for someone, a scientist named Dr. Vera." The creature's eyes widened. "You mean the outlaw healer? She's alive, but they keep her in the inner ring. No one gets near that place." Evan's heart leaped. "Alive?" The alien nodded slowly. "Barely, but yes." Lyra's voice shook. "That's my mother." The creature looked at her closely, then stepped aside. "Then may the stars protect you, child." Evan and Lyra followed the narrow tunnels until they reached a hidden base, a small room filled with stolen tech and quiet whispers. Inside were a few rebels, alien doctors and outlaw engineers, working on forbidden medicine. A woman with silver hair and green eyes looked up from her console. "You must be Evan Cross," she said. "We heard what you did on Ravion 6. The entire sector's talking about you." Evan raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know I was famous." The woman smirked. "You're infamous, actually, the human who broke the law to save an alien child." Lyra stepped forward. "Please, we need help. My mother's dying. And this," she lifted the glowing sphere, "is her cure." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. The woman's expression softened. "Your mother's work started all of this. She tried to unite species through medicine. The High Council called it corruption." Evan clenched his fists. "We need the last part of her formula." The woman nodded. "It's in the central lab, heavily guarded, but there's a weakness. An old cargo route through the sewer lines. You could slip in if you move fast." Evan looked at Lyra. "We'll get it." The woman handed him a small chip. "You'll need this to bypass the data locks. And one more thing." She pointed at the map glowing on the wall. "The High Commander himself is there tonight," Evan muttered. "Of course he is." They left the base under the cover of darkness, slipping through the old drainage tunnels toward the heart of the city. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing softly as they crawled through the narrow pipe. Finally, they emerged beneath the central lab, its walls glowing with blue energy. Evan activated the chip, and a hidden hatch opened. "After you, kid," he whispered. Inside, the lab was silent and sterile, rows of computers lining the walls. They moved quietly, step by step, until Lyra stopped, staring at a glass cell in the center of the room. Inside lay a gray-skinned woman, weak, breathing shallowly, her face almost lifeless. "Mother," Lyra gasped, pressing her hand to the glass. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and a faint smile crossed her lips. "Lyra, you found me," she whispered. Evan turned as a siren blared suddenly. Red lights flooded the room. The voice of the High Commander echoed from above, cold and cruel. "Human. Alien. You've broken every law in the galaxy." Lyra's mother looked at Evan weakly. "Don't let them destroy it. The cure must live." Evan pulled his weapon, standing between the guards and the two of them. "Come and take it," he growled. And as the soldiers stormed in, blasters ready, the room erupted into chaos once again. The part ends with Lyra screaming her mother's name. As the glass cell shatters under fire and everything fades into light, the glass cell exploded into a storm of light and shards. Smoke filled the lab, alarms screamed, and red warning lights flashed through the chaos. Evan pulled Lyra behind a metal console as blaster fire tore through the room. "Stay down," he shouted, his voice barely louder than the explosions. Lyra coughed, eyes wide with fear, watching as her mother collapsed on the floor. Her gray skin looked pale under the cold, lights. Her breathing shallow, Evan crawled toward her, dragging her away from falling debris. Lyra's voice cracked. "Is she alive?" Evan checked her pulse. "Barely, but we're not giving up yet." The High Commander's voice echoed from above, deep and cruel. "Human, surrender the cure and the alien child, and I might let you live." Evan stood, rage burning in his chest. "You call yourself a leader," he shouted, "but you're killing your own people." The commander laughed coldly. "The law keeps the galaxy pure, human. Without it, chaos will reign." Evan gritted his teeth. "Then maybe chaos is what we need." He grabbed Lyra's mother and carried her over his shoulder, firing back at the soldiers. Blaster bolts flashed past him, lighting the air in blinding streaks. Lyra followed close behind, clutching her glowing toy robot, which now pulsed brighter than ever. They reached the end of the corridor, where heavy steel doors blocked the exit. Evan slammed his hand on the control panel, but it stayed locked. Lyra's voice shook. "They sealed us in." Evan cursed under his breath. "Then we make our own way out." He placed a small charge on the door and pulled Lyra close. "Cover your ears," he said. The explosion shook the room, smoke pouring through the cracks. When it cleared, they ran through the broken frame into another lab chamber filled with glowing blue tanks. Evan lowered Lyra's mother gently to the ground. She opened her eyes weakly, whispering, "The cure. The nanites. Finish it before they come." Her voice trembled with pain, but her eyes were full of love as she looked at her daughter. "Lyra, you must complete what I started." Lyra nodded, tears streaming down her face. "But I don't know how," she cried. Her mother reached for the robot and placed a trembling hand on it. "The code. It's linked to your DNA. You were always part of the cure." Before they could react, the sound of boots filled the corridor again. Soldiers stormed in from both sides, weapons drawn. Evan stood tall in front of them, shielding the two with his body. He aimed his blaster and fire. Hitting the first guard square in the chest, then another and another, until the air was thick with smoke and fire. But there were too many. A shot hit Evan's shoulder, spinning him around, blood staining his sleeve. He groaned but didn't fall. Lyra screamed, "Stop! Leave him alone!" Her cry made the robot glow so bright that the lights in the lab flickered. The nanite sphere inside it began to spin, sending waves of energy through the room. Evan knelt beside Lyra's mother, his breathing heavy. She touched his hand weakly. "You've done enough, human," she whispered. "Save the child." Evan shook his head. "No, I'm saving all of you." He turned to Lyra. "You know what to do, kid. Finish the upload." Lyra wiped her tears and placed the robot on the lab's main terminal. Streams of code shot through the air like lightning, connecting every console. "The cure is unlocking," she said softly. Evan turned to face the soldiers, his blaster shaking in his bloodied hand. He smiled faintly. "You'll have to go through me first." The High Commander entered the room, his armor shining under the blue glow. "You could have been remembered as a hero, human," he said. Evan laughed bitterly. "Funny, that's exactly what I'm doing." He fired one last time, striking the commander's visor, cracking it. The commander roared in anger and fired back, the blast hitting Evan square in the chest. He stumbled back, falling to one knee. Lyra screamed, "Evan!" and ran to him. He looked up at her, blood on his lips, and whispered, "Don't cry, kid. Just finish it." The commander aimed again, but before he could shoot, the robot's energy reached its peak. The entire lab shook, glowing light spilling across every surface. Lyra pressed her hands against the console and shouted, "Activate nanite release!" The cure burst out in a wave of silver light, sweeping through the station like a living storm. Soldiers froze, their weapons dropping as the light touched them, healing wounds and burning away disease. Even the commander stumbled back, staring at his trembling hands as the nanites repaired his broken armor. Evan fell to the floor, barely breathing. Lyra crawled to him, tears falling onto his face. "It worked," she whispered. "The cure worked." Evan smiled weakly. "Told you, humans keep their promises." His voice faded as his eyes slowly closed. The light spread through the windows, out into the stars, carrying the cure to every world. The part ends with Lyra holding Evan's hand as the ship's alarms fall silent, her mother's weak voice whispering, "He saved us all." And outside, the galaxy glows with new light. The light of life returning, the light of the cure spread across the galaxy like dawn breaking after a long, dark night. Planets that had been dying began to glow again. Hospitals filled with the sick saw patients rise from their beds, healed by waves of silver nanites flowing through the air, and across the stars, the name Evan Cross began to echo like a legend, whispered by those who lived because of him. Inside the ruins of the Galactic Central Lab, everything was quiet now. The alarms were silent, the soldiers gone, and the air was filled with soft golden light. Lyra sat beside Evan, his body lying still on the cold floor, his face peaceful. She held his hand tightly, unwilling to let go. Her mother knelt beside her, weak but alive, her eyes full of tears. "Is he gone?" Lyra asked softly, her voice trembling. Her mother touched Evan's chest gently. "No," she whispered, "not gone, only resting." The nanites still glowed faintly on his skin, repairing what they could. But his wounds were deep, his body broken from the fight. For hours they stayed there, the mother whispering words of gratitude and sorrow. Lyra didn't speak, she just stared at the toy robot that had started it all. It lay on the ground beside Evan, still glowing faintly, its circuits pulsing like a heartbeat. She picked it up and held it close. "You saved us," she whispered to Evan. "You saved everyone." Outside, the once iron sky of the galactic city now shimmered with silver clouds. The nanites drifted like dust in sunlight, touching every corner of the planet. People were coming out of hiding, looking to the sky. For the first time in generations, there was no sickness, no fear, only hope. Hours later, Evan's eyes flickered open, weak but alive. He took a slow, painful breath and looked around. "Did we make it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra gasped, "Evan!" and threw her arms around him, crying with relief. He smiled weakly. "Easy, kid. I'm not that fragile." Her mother stepped forward, smiling through tears. "The cure worked, Evan. The galaxy is healing." He tried to sit up, wincing from the pain. "Well, about time something I did actually worked," he joked softly. Lyra laughed through her tears, the sound warm and pure. Days passed, and the story of what happened spread far and wide. People from different worlds began working together again. The Galactic Authority collapsed, its leaders hiding as a new alliance formed, one built on healing, not power. And through it all, people spoke of the human who broke the law to save a child. Evan sat in a recovery bay, his arm wrapped in a glowing healing band. Lyra visited him every day, bringing him food and sometimes just stories about the stars. She never let go of her toy robot. It was no longer just a machine. It was a reminder of her mother's love and Evan's courage. One day, as Evan prepared his ship to leave, Lyra stood by the ramp, holding the toy in her hands. "Where will you go now?" she asked softly. He smiled. "Wherever someone needs help, I guess. That's what humans do." She frowned. "You're leaving?" He nodded slowly. "Your world doesn't need a smuggler like me and more, Lyra. It needs builders and healers, not fighters." She looked down, trying not to cry. Then she stepped forward and held out her toy robot. "Take my toys, human," she said, her voice breaking. "You gave me everything. Now take this, so you don't forget us." Evan looked at her for a long moment, his eyes soft and tired. He reached out and closed her small hands around the toy instead. "No, kid," he said gently. "You keep it. It's your future now, not mine." Lyra's mother came forward, her voice trembling with emotion. "You could stay," she said. "You'd be welcome here." Evan smiled faintly. "I'd just get in the way. Besides, the stars are calling again." As he turned to go, Lyra ran after him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving my mother, for saving everyone." Evan smiled, patting her head softly. "Take care of her," he said. "And remember, being human isn't about where you're from. It's about what you do when someone needs you." The ship's engines roared to life, silver light shining across the platform. Lyra and her mother watched as the starbound rose into the golden sky, disappearing into the stars. For a long time, they stood there in silence, until Lyra looked up and smiled. "He's out there, helping someone else," she said, her voice full of pride. And far beyond the clouds, Evan sat in his ship, the stars reflecting in his tired eyes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal piece, a broken part of Lyra's toy. He turned it over in his hand and smiled. "Take my toys, human," he whispered to himself. "Yeah, I'll take them. And I'll take your hope, too." The ship soared into the endless light of space, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy felt alive again.